Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Microsoft 365 Business Boost Show. I am your host, Thurman Trotman, and I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Nick DeCourcy. Nick, what's going on?
Not much, Thurman. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm great. The sun is shining. A little bit of the little bit of sunshine that we're getting these days is shrinking. You know what I mean? And I don't like that. I'm a summer guy, not really a fall guy, not a winter guy. I'm definitely not a spring guy. I'm a summer guy. You know what I'm saying? And my time is coming to an end here. But it's all good. It's all good. I'll make the best of it. As you know, Nick, this is the Business Boost Show. This is where we cover topics that can help, businesses that listen to our show, usually in the Microsoft 365 space, to help them, boost their business. You know what I mean?
We try.
So today we're going to take a little bit of a turn, a little bit of a twist, you know what I'm saying? And not necessarily laser focus on the business, but maybe something business adjacent. So cell phones. You, with the combination of, watching the event that Apple had earlier this week and also some choices that you're making in your own life, you seem to be, what's the term? Over it when it comes to phones. But I'm not gonna speak for you. I'll let you, explain to the listeners, to the viewers, how you really feel about these cell phones. What you got?
Yeah, I was just feeling a little bit reflective about it. I was thinking about this. Apple had their recent event where they announced the iPhone 17, and they had 70 minutes of new products. New iPhone,
70?
new iPhone Air, 70. Yeah, it was a long one. iPhone Air, iPhone Pro, AirPods Pro, Apple
iPhone
Watches.
Air being the very thin iPhone.
The very thin one with the very large bump at the back. So I don't know how thin that makes it. It depends on what part of it you look at as to how thin it is, I guess. So I'm imagining that the stats that we want to talk about are the ones where we're not looking at the bump, but we have to think about it warts and all, so that bump is important potentially. But the thing is, I'm not going to be buying an iPhone Air, and I'm probably not going to be buying an iPhone 17, and I'm probably not going to be buying the new iPhone Pro, just because I realize that I just don't care anymore. Like every year these things appear and they're evangelized in these events that become slicker and more produced, and we're so far now from Steve Jobs in his little black outfit being on stage and saying just one more thing. Was that him? He was the just one more thing guy, right? You see, I'm
Maybe,
getting confused now. Yeah, I think that's what he did. Didn't he say something like there's just going to be one more? No, maybe that was Columbo. Was it Columbo?
Yeah.
Was just one more thing? Or maybe Steve Jobs did something that was kind of like Columbo, but you wouldn't confuse Columbo and Steve Jobs. I don't think most people wouldn't. I certainly wouldn't. But anyhow, we're so far from those events that used to happen, where it was like, wow, we've got this new iPhone, and everyone's going to be standing outside the stores, and it used to be genuinely exciting that the hardware was moving forward, and there would be new things that you were doing with it, and the things that you hadn't imagined before were now possible. And I realised, I've got a phone here; it's an iPhone. I literally have no idea what model of iPhone it is. Well, I could find out, but off the top of my head, I have no idea. I don't know how much memory it has. I don't know how old it is. I know nothing about it other than it does what I need it to do, and it gets on, and I don't need a new one right now. And I think this is a huge change with technology, hardware, in that hardware is good enough now that it just isn't exciting. Like it used to be that these steps forward were consequential to your experience of it. But I think, the last 5 years, the last 10 years maybe, all of this stuff has just become so good to a kind of level where it's good enough that there isn't anything about it that's actually exciting anymore. What do you think?
Well, I think I know exactly why that is. We first got cell phones with the sole purpose of being able to make calls on the go. Mobile phones, we can make calls. So what do we call that? We call that a phone. That's the whole point of what that thing does and did. You know what I mean? It calls people.
Yeah.
Now, as time has gone on, they adapted the name smartphones, but everybody still calls them a phone. And we now equate what a phone used to do with what instead now is a computer. This is literally a computer that we walking around in our pockets. The last thing you need to do on it is call anybody. You could go multiple days in a row without ever calling anybody, and you have gotten a ton of use out of this thing we call a phone. Where before, a phone was just you pick it up, you press some buttons, you call somebody.
Well, so, wasn't there this whole thing? Sorry to interrupt, but there was this whole thing recently of a report that Gen Z has like terrible like phone anxiety. Did you see that? I forget where it was. And I was like, I saw this. So there was like this thing of like, we'll do anything other than make a phone call, and like that makes perfect sense because I have fond memories when I was a kid. I mean, I'm dating myself now. I might as well, you know. I look youthful, but I'm not. Maybe I don't look youthful anymore. I don't know. 4K, warts and all. But I have I have fond memories of, you know, being in the hallway on the phone that actually was plugged into the wall, you know, like you could go maybe like 10 feet with it in either direction, but that was as far as you could move with the thing, and all you could do was sit there and talk to someone. And I still remember the phone numbers of some of my friends when I was, you know, in high school that I would talk to in the evenings, because you'd sit there and you'd dial them all the time. Didn't have memory or anything like that on it. You just had to open a book, get the number, and put it in. And, you know, that experience has been gone for a very, very long time. And so I completely understand. Like, I don't expect my son, who's 4, to really learn about, you know, making lots of phone calls. Like, he's happy to like FaceTime with his family members and so on and so forth. But it's a very different experience. So I can completely understand that you don't want to pick up the phone and have that kind of weird experience that you've maybe not had a huge amount of. But sorry, I interrupted you. But that was just something that came to mind there.
Maybe we could share the article. We'll put that, you know what I mean, in show notes.
If I can find it. I mean, I may have just made it up in the same way that I conflated Steve Jobs and Columbo. But who knows?
Well, hopefully you're not on the show making stuff up. You know what I'm saying? It's not like you, Nick. I don't see that.
Not purposefully, but you know, sometimes I do have to wonder whether whether there's some problem between here and here that just makes it not make sense. But who knows?
Yeah. So for a long time we still call this thing a phone, but literally what it is now is a computer. And so I think that's where the disconnect comes in, because what the phone is doing makes sense, except that we don't call it a phone. I mean, we do call it a phone. It's a computer. So if you think about your regular computers used to be exciting to get. They used to be designed differently. They used to be different colors and different sizes, and they used to be significantly different. Then usher in this whole new, everything looks pretty much, it's going to be black, it's going to be sleek, and hey, can we make it smaller? Now you got people who are customizing their own desktops still, but desktops are out the window. It's now about laptops. The majority of people will buy a laptop. That's just what it is. Those are computers, and the computers are doing a thing that we're used to. That whole wave of like a cool computer, like your Sony Vaios and your NECs or whatever, that went out the window a long time ago. Now it's just the hardware is the hardware, but what matters is on the inside. And the majority of people don't really care what's on the inside. Just give me the latest, greatest, you know, or give me what's cheap, because now I can go buy a laptop at Walmart. So all of that happening with a computer, totally normal. But because we call this thing a phone and we treat it way differently than me and you grew up knowing what a phone was for. We didn't buy a phone every couple of years. We didn't expect our quote phone to break. We didn't we didn't have a device that could do way more than make phone calls. Like, all of this is not phone. It's not connected to a phone. Not for people like me and you. For someone who grew up in this world and everyone called that thing a phone, to them a phone is that block in their hand, not a thing plugged into the wall, and you got to remember your numbers, and you press buttons, physical buttons on it. Like, that's a totally different thing. So I think that the change that you're feeling is normal for a computer, but we just happen to call this thing a phone because that's how it came out. And I'm just like, full disclosure, my personal insight here is I feel the same way. I don't care. You know what I'm saying? Like, my phone is going to break or just start getting crappy, and then I got to go out and buy a new one. And that's just what it is. You know what I'm saying?
Buy what is available at that point. You know, I think the point that you're making, though, about the computer thing, I think that is very relevant, though. And I think, you know, circling back to this issue of, well, what is the business relevance of a topic like this? And it's, I remember back when I was in school, I used to help out in the computer lab a lot. That's where I kind of got the interest in this kind of stuff. And I remember when I think we were on Pentium 1, 233 megahertz machines with MMX technology was where I started. They were Windows 95, I think, in that lab. And I remember when we first took delivery, I think they were 300 megahertz Pentium 2s. And I think they were running Windows 98 instead, maybe they were still 95. I don't recall correct. But anyhow, there was an upgrade. But it was a palatable, noticeable, that you could feel the change. That was the difference in, you know, we've gone out and we've bought something new, and it's made a change, not just to what it says on the box or to how much the company that made it can charge for it, but it's made a difference to the experience of using this. And that continued on. I remember going into Pentium 3, you know, the first experience of getting to Windows XP, you know, like all of these kind of things that have come along in that kind of computer age. And at some point, the significance of all of those steps just vanished. And, you know, I can pick up a laptop now from around the house that, you know, probably 3 or 4 years old, and there's no noticeable difference between it in terms of my experience of using it and, you know, the new Snapdragon Copilot Plus PC that I bought earlier this year. To all intents and purposes, unless I am specifically trying to do something that shows some difference in performance, my experience of using those two devices is 95% of the time exactly the same.
Right.
And so this idea of, you know, we're on this cycle of you have a new phone every year, or you have a new laptop every 2 or 3 years, or you have a new desktop every 4 or 5 years. Like, it's something that made sense a while ago because you would see that significant difference. But today, if you're a business owner, if you're a small business owner buying computers, your need in terms of hardware is probably very, very different than if you were doing exactly the same thing 20 years ago. You know, I think that is the significance of, you know, on the one hand, as a consumer, you could say it's boring. As a business owner, you could say this is a huge opportunity to sweat these assets a bit more than we've ever been able to in the past.
Yeah, I remember when I had this realization that you're talking about right now a few years ago. And I used to downplay the things I thought because I was like, nah, maybe I'm thinking too small, or there's a whole bunch of things that I didn't consider. But you're right. This is not even like new. You know what I'm saying? Like, this thought process of how you could really, you know, get way more strategic with these computers in your business years ago. You know what I'm saying? Like, you could have thought about this. Even remember when Chromebooks were like the thing? You know, matter of fact, they were not that long ago. They brought out the Chromebooks for COVID for the kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if the school had the funds, then they went out and bought a bunch of Chromebooks, and all Chromebooks did were cheaply get your hardware to take you to the web. That's all the Chromebook did. Because as you know about Windows, it's a desktop software, but Google introduced their software as like a web OS, you know what I'm saying? Which is like crazy. You know what I mean? Like all you need is the conduit, you know what I mean, to take you from here to web. And that's what Google provided for super cheap. Right up their alley with the type of things they do already.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to point out though, like other pieces of hardware that seem to be going through this revolution.
Yep.
And a car is right up that same alley. Today, there are cars, because that's what we always call them, on the road that you could look at and be like, oh, that's a computer. You know what I'm saying? It's not a traditional change the oil, what else? I don't know, the drivetrain. I don't know. I don't know about cars, clearly. You know what I'm saying? But they are also transitioning from being things that you used to sit in and drive and be behind a wheel and all that. And it's like, hey, this is a car. But if you would have brought one of the electric cars from today and brought it back to like 1995 and showed somebody a car that we would be driving in the future, they'd be like, that's not a car, that's a computer. You know what I mean? It's like you're sitting inside of a computer. It's so futuristic. It's so cool. That's where we are. There's a lot of things that we identify with that is changing from being the thing we used to know it as to literally a computer. Like why are you shipping things that can connect to Wi-Fi that have no business? My washing machine. What does my washing machine need to connect to Wi-Fi for? A feature I've never used, and I'm so mad that I bought that stupid wash and dry set. Anyway,
you can't get away from it now. You cannot get away from it. But it's interesting that you make that point because you know that if you think of like your laptop computer, right? It has a wonderful life running Windows. And then when it's come to the end of that life, if you want to, you could run Chrome OS Flex on it and give it another life, right? And you've got a device that'll just work. And if what you want to do is access the internet, which is what most of what we do is now, then you can probably use that device until it physically falls apart, basically. It'll continue running. Because we have that flexibility, because we have a kind of standardized set of hardware and software that will work with it, and we have choices. But you think of your washing machine, right? Your connected washing machine.
A terrible washing machine.
If the vendor of that washing machine goes out of business, then your washing machine is no longer connected. No matter how good it is, no matter how good the hardware is, like you can't be like, okay, I'm going to go and install Samsung's smart washing machine OS on my LG one. You know, you just can't do that. And the same with cars. You know, if you're driving a Rivian and they go out of business and you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to install Tesla version 27 on this. You can't do it. So despite the fact that they are computers, they are computers. In many ways, when we talk about computers, we're not talking about just like any old thing with like a processor inside it that can run some software. We're talking specifically about like an IBM PC kind of setup where you have that flexibility. You have different peripherals that you can work with. You have different choices that you can make about how you use it. And that isn't the case with this new technology. And so does that make it exciting? No. It just makes it makes it redundant. At some point, it's going to become redundant, and that
it also
life.
Makes it. Sorry, I was going to say, but it also makes it not ours. You know what I'm saying? Like they take away ownership. You know the thing that everybody's been complaining about. You can't buy a DVD,
like right to repair or ownership of content. You mean?
Yeah. That's very frustrating.
Yeah, I mean it is, and it's very interesting that we see this in this kind of proliferation of technology, And I would argue that like there are some places where this technology is genuinely exciting in what it potentially promises. But whereas new technology, say 20 years ago, back when we were talking about that upgrade to a 300 megahertz PC from a 233, that kind of leap, we don't see that now. We don't see that even in these places where technology is kind of the exciting factor. You can't upgrade your laundry machine. You can't upgrade your smart air conditioner. I think I've
Yeah.
talked before on the show about my Garden, whatever it's called. Have I told you about this?
What's that?
The smart lettuce growing garden that my wife purchased, which was
I
the
don't think you
least
told me about that.
the least smart thing I've ever come across in my entire
Oh
life.
man.
The only thing that it confirmed was that the people selling it are smarter than I am because I was dumb enough to part with money to have this thing in my house. But
Hmm.
like if you just like prefix it with it's smart, it's connected, etc., someone gets excited about it in the same way that we got excited about the launch of the iPhone 5. And in many, many very objective ways, the iPhone 5 was much more exciting than any connected laundry machine is ever going to be.
Right. Yeah, you're right. It's tricky, and it's noticeable again because of when we grew up. You know what I mean? The folks who are growing up, I wouldn't even say my son, because my son even still knows what it is to be in a house with like we had a cable box and TV, and primarily getting our entertainment through a TV, but slowly saw that that people use their phone way more than a TV. And then there's kids who are younger who they don't know that. You know what I'm saying? The TV is not what it is. I have a device and all my stuff active on demand all the time. You know what I'm saying? Like I could just get it whenever I want. So I think if you're a business owner, I think the takeaway here is like leverage it. You know what I'm saying? Because there was a time back in the days when you would hire a company and not hire a company, you're running a company and then you would have to hire some folks and you would buy them computers. You know what I mean? With the way things are set up now, you don't necessarily have to buy them computers in order for them to be successful at your organization. It's just a totally different situation that we're living in. Now, if you want to, there's also like the execs used to get phones. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, now do you still do that? You know what I mean? And if you do, that's when you should take advantage of like cheap phones, because we don't need these phones that we have. They're, to your point, they're getting the same. They're the same. You know what I mean? This phone that I have, one of the phones that I have right now, is the first time that I went and got like not the latest greatest. It was really slow. Like everything was just slow. And I was just like, wow, I've gotten used to using high powered, extremely expensive phones to where now this extremely powerful device in my hand, I'm like, oh man, this is slow and stupid. You know what I'm saying? So it's you can take advantage as a business owner by getting cheap and still finding quality. You know what I mean? Not buying devices. You don't have to get the latest greatest phone. Like that day is over. I don't even know if companies were ever doing that. But yeah, different world we're living in. And the phone thing is absolutely I think not only me and you feel this way. There's a ton of people who are over it, because going from 3 to 4 and 4 to 5, exciting. Going from like 15 to 16 to 17 or whatever it's the same thing. There's nothing.
Oh, it's exactly the same thing, and it's just not exciting anymore. And I think going back to your point about the business IT, I think you can see it two different ways. One is you do want to give an attractive device to someone who's working for you, because from a security and compliance perspective, you don't want to give them a reason to use their personal device because in some way it's better than the one that you've issued them within the company. Like this is a huge thing when it comes to like shadow IT right now, shadow AI. If you're issuing the iPhone 15 without Apple Intelligence and they have an iPhone 17 with Apple Intelligence, does that mean that some of your company data is going through that? I mean, who is using Apple Intelligence, I don't know. But if you are, then that's a potential concern. So yeah, there's that there, but also there's this flip side of you can simply expect that everyone is going to have a device pretty much that meets your needs. So then you can think about things like Windows 365, which is a great tool to be able to give people a virtual PC that you own, but they don't have to have another device. They don't have to be carrying something different around. They can choose whichever device they would like, and it works perfectly fine. So there's all those options out there.
And security.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't think there's necessarily one right or wrong way to play that. The thing that I will say is there's a lot of service providers that make some of their revenue through the refresh cycle of equipment, right? And you can push your vendors on, well, I want to support that for longer. Like I want to buy a device with the longest warranty I can possibly buy on it, and I want to keep sweating that asset for as long as I can. There's nothing wrong with that. It made sense years ago to be getting a new device every couple of years. It really doesn't make that much sense anymore. So there's lots of places where this kind of new world that we're in terms of everything that you could buy now is pretty much good enough for whatever you're likely to do with it, unless you're doing something very specific. There's lots of places that, for good and for bad, that intersects with what business owners will be doing, or people with responsibility for these kinds of issues within larger organizations. And it is potentially an opportunity to rethink it, and just to rethink it from a point of view of what do you actually need, what do you need in terms of sustainability, what does your budget allow you to do, and how do you keep your teams happy? Because I think those things may have shifted over the last 5 to 10 years without any of us really noticing.
Yeah, I think that's the takeaway is I was gonna say upgrade your security posture, but or your IT posture, but really that's not a thing that you set and forget. Your IT strategy should be like a living, breathing thing. So over the years, as things happen, then you're constantly, moving with the times. Like obviously right now, you already mentioned it, the big thing is AI. So that has to somehow be part of your strategy. Figure out how that works. Because to your point, they can, if they use Apple Intelligence, you don't know how your data might be getting leaked. You know what I'm saying? So stuff to pay attention to. I think it's really difficult to be in that world of cybersecurity and to do an effectively good job for a really long time. I respect the people in that industry because I think that is really difficult. So, keep your cybersecurity posture active. It's not a set it and forget it thing.
I agree with that.
Well, Nick, any more thoughts about the old school phone or new school phones that you hate?
I don't think so. I think I've shared everything that I potentially hate about that.
Would you consider yourself? Huh?
I said, and I've reminisced.
Oh, okay. All right. Good deal. I'm glad you got that out. I was gonna say, would you consider yourself at this point the old guy on the lawn shaking your fist at things you don't like? Would we have you moved into that into that level?
I don't know. I mean, I hope not. I mean, in terms of some of the technology, I think I'm kind of ahead of the game a bit in terms of what I'm seeing. So I do think this. I think this is a real change, and I think the shares in Apple went down, I think 3.5% the day after they had their event, and I don't think there's anything wrong with what they released. Like, what they released is solid. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing that would, if my phone broke tomorrow, I would go to an Apple store and I would buy an iPhone 17 because that's the current version. And I know that I want to keep it for as long as I can because I'm not that interested in upgrading all the time. So I'm going to buy it. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing to turn me away from it. But it just isn't that interesting. And there's a whole bunch of people out there that are waiting for something exciting to happen. And there just isn't anything exciting to happen with this anymore. Like it just
not in this industry.
It is what it is, and the exciting place is the software. The exciting place is
Right.
what we can process in the cloud. I mean, potentially there's excitement to come about bringing some of these AI capabilities onto device. But we're not quite there yet. We're not quite there in terms of being able to do that or what the use case would be. So I do think there's potentially in the future some shifting sands that will come, like if the industry moves towards this idea of on-device AI, and that moves into the PC space to a much greater degree than it is right now, then will there be a reason to go out and buy a new device? Well, perhaps. And will it be exciting to upgrade them regularly? Well, perhaps. But I think what we've seen in the last couple of years, well, right now the Copilot Plus PC ain't it. Like, I think we've seen that, and that's something that we've learned over that period of time. I think I'm in the minority that my main laptop is a Copilot Plus PC, but maybe that will change over time. But that idea that everyone's going to get excited about this every single year, I think that's the past.
Well, they probably know that.
Yeah.
Apple's a big business, been doing it for years. They know strategic planning or how to be strategic, you know what I mean? All that stuff, they know. They know these things are not what they used to be. So they'll probably be moving on here soon, or they have already moved on and we're just in the midst of it. So there's that. Nick, this was great as usual. But before we are about to get out of here, but before we do, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you and if you got anything going on this week?
Come and find me on LinkedIn. I write there every day. I have my, we've talked a little bit about AI and the future of AI. So go and check out my Responsible AI course. This is something I haven't talked about a huge amount recently, but I think it's still very relevant to where we are at, that all of us need to be thinking about how to use these new tools responsibly. And if that's something that you're not that familiar with, or people in your organization not that familiar with, I have a course that will help you to understand those topics and to be a bit safer with what you're trying to do with those tools. How about you, Thurman?
LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn guy, man. Every now and then I get hyped up and I go back on there every day, but then I fizzle out to every couple of days. But I love LinkedIn when it's not being a ridiculous resource hog in the browser on my computer. I'm lost.
Yeah, that is a problem.
Yeah, so find me on LinkedIn. And I mean, I got a course too, Nick. You know what I mean? So if I may, I would just like to say that, matter of fact, we were talking about cybersecurity. You probably have a risk register if you're managing cybersecurity at your organization. I sell a course that shows you how to build a risk register in SharePoint, because if you have it in Excel, I guarantee it's trash. Respectfully, you want to move that into a tool that can handle that's more flexible, way more flexible, and actually collaborative, which is SharePoint. Excel is not a collaborative tool. We just need to let that out the bag.
Collaborate too hard in Excel and you'll break it for everyone.
Right. Exactly. All right. Well, yeah, Nick, I will see you again in 2 weeks, and you take it easy.
You too, Thurman. Take care.